Good evening, everyone. Going to call the Regulatory Review Committee meeting to order for 6 o'clock on Thursday, March the 27th. Next item on the agenda is election of a chair. Look at all.
I'll do it if nobody wants it.
That sounds great.
Okay, go ahead.
That's almost a motion in a second.
I need a motion in a second, if that's what you want.
I'll make a motion that Mark is going to be chair of the regulatory.
Seconded. All those in favor?
All right,
There you go, sir.
so, I don't know how we're supposed to handle this, so we don't have the applicant here.
I believe it was made clear at the last meeting that we would have a regulatory review committee meeting at 6 o'clock to.
Even so, can I come up and read a letter from the owner of Crosby's?
Sure.
You need a roll
This
call.
is the agenda.
Roll call, Paul Rabs,
Present.
Jennifer Therian,
Here.
Mark Eastman's here. Okay, now we'll move on.
Would you like me to call him and see if he's on his way, or?
Yeah, why don't you, and we'll let Ed speak on behalf of Crosby's.
Ed Rankin, Bucksport. I have a letter from owner of Crosby's, Mike Valindotti, and I'm gonna read it as he wrote it, not to be redundant of, you already know it's from Mike Valindotti, but to whom it may concern, my name is Mike Valindotti and I am the current owner of Crosby's Drive-In. Unfortunately, I could not be here tonight as I have a prior engagement. Regardless of my availability, I find it very important to let the committee know of my concerns involving the potential rezoning of the former car wash that borders Crosby's for the sale of marijuana and cannabis products. First and foremost, I am against the idea of rezoning this property to allow it to become yet another marijuana dispensary. Currently, the property right across the street from my restaurant, the business formerly known as Snowman's Grocery, is in the process of renovations to sell marijuana. There is a dispensary a little over a mile away around the entrance to Verona Island, and the proprietors of that business are opening another dispensary on Route 1 at the address formerly occupied by the Grindle Insurance. There is also another dispensary on Acadia Highway a few miles outside of Bucksport, Orland, and I have heard whispers of yet another venture opening up in Orland. How many cannabis-related stores does this area need? Crosby's is a family restaurant, and to put it frankly, being bordered on 2 of the 4 sides of my property with cannabis stores, regardless of their status as legal business, will hurt our brand, which has been in the area institution for over 80 years. While marijuana is legal in the state of Maine, one can argue that it is still a controversial topic. Having yet another cannabis store right next to Crosby's arguably could influence our clientele to stop patronage at my restaurant. Kids and families run around our property. Cannabis stores prohibit the use of products on their properties. What's to keep their customers from parking in my lot and using their products on my property? I ask this because of our unique setup. We do not have any inside seating, so people tend to treat our parking lot like a free-for-all of whatever they want to do. I've seen it time and time again, and we have had to tell people to not smoke at our windows, even though there are signs all over the place. Not to have booze fest on our lawns because it's illegal, and yes, please do not smoke weed regardless that you are sitting in your car with the windows down. Families do not want that, and families will avoid places where their children have potential to become inadvertently high because the area is surrounded by the higher potential of being exposed to marijuana use. Why haven't we allowed cannabis stores down on Main Street? Because the downtown businesses do not want them there and it will hurt their image. Is it fair that my business should have to have these stores dumped all around it because they would be considered less visible than downtown? I may add that a seasonal restaurant that is known from all over, we are a high tourist stop during the summer months. The image these stores in such close proximity to each other project would potentially damage us economically, as there is a proportionate amount of people who do not feel the same way about cannabis as others. There are other areas that are already zoned for this in Bucksport. If the person who is involved in this is opening another weed shop in town. I read that wrong. There are other areas that are already zoned for this in Bucksport if the person who involved in this is hell-bent on opening another weed shop in town. There are real estate signs on buildings in these areas, so the options are there. We put another cannabis store literally across the street from the same niche business. Crosby's may potentially be the longest running continual business in Bucksport, and I think it deserves a little respect and consideration to its image instead of saddling it with being stranded in the middle of a figurative weed field. Thank you for your time. Mike Valinoti.
I called, there's no answer at his phone. So I don't, my understanding was he knew that this was happening tonight, so
Well,
he requested it, correct?
he requested it, and at the last meeting, he was here when the council said that they would have a regulatory review committee meeting at 6 o'clock prior to the next council meeting.
I'm wondering if he'll show up at 7 and think it's in the body of the meeting.
I don't know legally if there's a rule about I know for planning board, the applicant has to be present. I don't know if that's the same for regulatory review. I think we're allowed to discuss this without him.
So you can discuss it without him. The point of having the applicant present is to present their information. You know, their,
Sure.
which is,
I would say, yes, in Orland, there's one about to be in the old Snowman's convenience store across the street from Crosby's. I would say that the planning board and the council said they wanted this in town. They said they wanted to be business friendly, or that we claimed to be business friendly, and therefore we wanted to allow this type of business. And so we did. And these were the zones that were chosen: Route 1 Shoreland and Commercial 1, which is along US Route 1 on either side of the road, basically. Commercial 1 basically ends right about Spring Fountain. So from there up is C2, and it's not allowed. So a contract zone, in my mind, should only be considered if it's a benefit to the town for some reason. Silver Lake Estates was a contract zone, and that was a big benefit to the town, in my opinion, and it was in the council's opinion at that time. I tend to agree with Mike Valinoti that there are properties available on US Route 1 in the zone where he could build a store or do what he wants to do. My opinion would be no. Not that I get a vote, but that's my opinion.
I also, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we've given a contract zone when we have direct abutters opposing this.
no, that's a, because zoning, people make investments in property in a community with zoning based on allowed uses in that zone. If you buy a property in a residential zone in Bucksport, you're pretty sure that somebody's not gonna put a gas station next door. That's a bigger example, but that's, zoning offers those protections. Anyone in C2 who has property would not have anticipated that a marijuana facility would be located there. It's not an allowed use in that zone. And so when you spot zone, which is really what this is, one lot in a zoning district for use that's not been previously allowed there, then the abutters are the most affected. They're the ones who had a reasonable expectation that the rules would be the rules, and you've changed it for this one item in order to be another. If you, Luann Wasson got a contract zone for a solar farm in an area that didn't want, we had 0 abutter negative reaction, and the terms of citing that solar farm were that it could not be visible from Route 1 or Route 46. There are people who have no idea there's a solar farm up behind Luann Watson's because of the sighting, but that was allowed to happen because no abutters offered any, we don't want it, and the council's concerns about it being an eyesore, visible, were addressed by the fact that you can't see it from Route 1. And the town turned down a contract zone for Amoresco when it wanted to locate a solar farm on a lot just outside the industrial district that would have been highly visible for and adjacent to residential properties. They found another lot in the industrial zone and they built that development. But the council has been pretty focused on the specifics of each request and whether there's any negative abutter response to that. I don't know that we've had negative. Was the council's concern over adjacency. There were some people who came to the Amoresco hearing, if you remember, that didn't think it was a great idea for them to put it in that zone directly abutting, and that was turned down. And that has been a consideration for the council is what abutters think, and primarily for the reason that I say is that zoning is, some people hate it because they figure it's an infringement on property rights, but it's also protection. A person's home or business is generally the largest investment they make. And when they make that investment in a community that has zoning, they do it with the idea that they have a reasonable expectation of the rules staying consistent about where they put their property and what else can locate there. And every time you change the rules on somebody that's made those kind of investments, you may have people that are less than happy. You know, this is not our community, but there was a community that rezoned a rural recreational area to industrial in order to facilitate a very large investment, and it ended up in years of litigation. Because those people that were already there had a reasonable expectation that rural recreation wasn't going to be industrial tomorrow. That, as usual, Councilor Rankin, I'm talking too much, but that's how you've operated these things and what the kind of process that as a municipal official I look at when someone is asking for these is, how does this impact the people who are there, who had an expectation that the rules would be the rules? Is there some big reason that this would be awesome, that they would love, and they would be happy that it was there? Or do they express concerns about the impact to, the one across the street's in Orland. We can't do anything about Orland. That's up to them, and I don't know why. My guess is that you're right. He'll show up at 7, but which is fine. Do
you have any other questions about zoning or contract zones or marijuana? No? Perfect.
Thank you.
I'm not on this committee, I'll just put in my 2 cents of my opinion, that was Mike, not me. We've got the zone, we're not saying this gentleman can't do it, he just has to do it in the zone that's available, which there is space available. This particular case where you got one abutter that's extremely against it, the other abutter mildly against it, does not want it, I'm not in favor of it at all. I think this should be shot down.
And I sort of feel like sort of piecing out zoning exceptions is not a sort of a pattern that I'd like to see us go as a council, unless it was something in line with our comprehensive plan, like we needed extra housing zoning or.
Sure.
But this isn't something that we can tie into our goals to change a contract zone. That's my
I agree.
Everything's been covered so far that I had for my notes. I went online the other day and got into the land use ordinance that Luke had crafted. A couple pages of stores and and all that, and read through it, so. And then covered everything else, the changing use, the contract zone, the abutters and so forth, the fact that he's not here that we can ask questions to. Earlier in the night, I thought if he had shown up and we could ask questions, then it would make sense possibly to move it on to let all 7 counselors listen and make a decision, but as I sit here right now, I'm not in favor of moving it forward.
You have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we do not go forward with this request.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Item 5.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second, sorry, sleep with the switch.
All those in favor?